Hi, my name is Paul O'Sullivan, and I'm a lecturer in the Department of Economics. And I'll be giving the module EC101 Microeconomics 1 in semester 1. So, this presentation is just a brief overview of what microeconomics is about and what issues we'll be discussing in the module. So, while economics as a whole is a study of decision making and its effects on society, one of the major branches of economics is microeconomics, and this looks at decision making behavior at an individual, or what we call micro level. Okay, so we look at the decision making of individuals as buyers or as workers, uh, of sellers, like companies or businesses, and also decision making by individual governments. And quite often decisions are made in the context of what we call scarce or limited resources. All right, so as an individual, for instance, if you look at the picture of the money, we don't have unlimited income, so we have to make decisions on how best to use the income that we have at our disposal, knowing that money spent on one thing cannot be spent on something else. Okay, um, time is another scarce resource. There's only 24 hours in a day, so we as individuals or as businesses have to determine what's the optimum use of our time. Okay, so we have to divide the time at our disposal across the various activities that we want to engage in. Okay, if you're a seller of a good, there's only a limited amount of demand or amount of people want to buy your goods. So to maximize your profit, you're going to have to make a decision on what price you're going to set for the product that you sell. All right, and again, from the point of view of governments, governments have to raise money to fund public services, and they usually do so through taxation. So they have to make a decision on what's the optimum tax rate to set in order to try and maximize the amount of tax revenue that they can take in. And then when they have to make the decision to spend the tax revenue, like spending income, there's only a fixed amount, and that has to be allocated to various government departments like health and education and justice and so on. All the while knowing that the more money is given to health, the less is left for something else. Okay, so governments have to make a decision as to what they're going to do. So in deciding on how to limit or how to allocate your limited resources, it'll depend crucially on what's your objective. All right. So if your objective is to own a Ferrari, well, that is going to determine how you allocate your time and your effort and the income that you earn in order to be able to own your Ferrari. All right. If your objective is to be the best soccer player on the planet, well, that is going to determine from a young age how you should allocate your time and your energy in order to acquire the skills necessary to get to that position. Okay, businesses have to determine, well, how much staff do they employ, what do they pay them, how much do they invest in machinery or in IT or in innovation in order to maximize their profit over a certain time period. All right. Governments again have to allocate, like we said before, have to allocate resources to achieve their objective, which could be to maximize their likelihood of getting re-elected in the next election, or ideally, we would like it to be they want to maximize economic growth or national welfare over a given number of years. Okay, so just as a very simple example, you might ask yourself, well, what's the optimal use of time given multiple options? Okay, so if you think of a unit of time as an hour, at any point in time, we ask ourselves, well, what's the optimal way to use the next hour of time that we have? And we could choose to study, we could choose to exercise, we could choose to socialize with friends, or we could spend it on social media, among other things. All right. The best way to use that hour will depend on what your objective at that particular time is. Okay, so if it's coming up to exams, an extra hour of study might be much more beneficial than an hour in the pub with your friends. Okay, if you have been studying all day and you need to recover or need a bit of downtime, well then maybe an hour of exercise or an hour with your friends is better than an extra hour of study. Okay, so the answer will depend on your objective at a particular time or the circumstances in which you find yourself in. So another topic we're going to look at is market structure. And this is going to ask the question, what type of market do buyers and sellers operate in? And does the type of market affect the outcome in the market? Okay, so if you look at different markets, the outcomes can be quite different. So if you look at someone like Microsoft are effectively a monopoly in producing operating systems for PCs and laptops. So when they make decisions on pricing and so on, they don't necessarily have to take into account how other companies are going to react because Microsoft effectively dominate the market, right? Whereas in the airline market in Ireland, it's dominated by two companies, Ryanair and Aer Lingus, and when they set the price of their flights or they set their capacity on a particular route, they will have to take into account how their rival is acting as well. So if Ryanair want to increase the price of their flights, this may encourage more people to fly with Aer Lingus and vice versa. Okay. Whereas if you're a fruit and veg seller, you might be in a situation where you're selling goods that are basically sold by many other fruit and veg suppliers. So this is going to limit your ability to increase your prices, because if you do so, people may just move their costs onto to another seller. All right. So in a sense, the ability or the outcomes in markets will depend on the degree of competition within those markets. Okay. And the last section we're going to look at is government policy. So sometimes if there are what we call undesirable outcomes or outcomes that we feel are not necessarily in the public interest, governments can intervene in those. All right. So if the cost of living increases, governments can put maybe a maximum price on rent, or if there's overconsumption of alcohol, they may put a minimum price on alcoholic drinks. Governments can incentivize behavior. So if carbon emissions are increasing, governments can implement taxes on activities or goods that are what we call carbon intensive, and that drives up the price of those goods, and that may encourage people to consume less or to engage in less carbon emitting activity. Governments can simply outlaw certain types of behavior. Okay, so you can't smoke in public areas. And governments can also encourage people to do things by making them available either free or at a very low cost. So quite often, the winter flu vaccination can be made available for free to encourage people to get vaccinated. The lower the price of being vaccinated, the more people that take it up, and that can reduce the strains on the health service if less people get infected. Right, so a similar situation may occur if there's a vaccine for coronavirus. Okay, so this is an introductory module. You don't have to have taken economics at Leaving Cert. We start from the very start. Okay, so you're not going to be at any disadvantage if you haven't taken economics before. The assessment will be a combination of final exam and continuous assessment. The exact weights given to both will depend on what happens in terms of COVID-19 and the restrictions that we face. If you do want to study economics in the future, most or many of the modules in second and third year are built upon this module. So this module is really a prerequisite for any further study you want to take in economics.